Ryan Holiday. So officially, I have to say two things to you.
Okay.
One is thank you, because without your idea and without your subtle pushing, I probably wouldn't have written this book. And it's been one of the fucking coolest experiences of my life.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. So first is thank you. Second is fuck you.
Because it was one of the least pleasant
Yes,
experiences.
because it was one of the hardest,
Yeah.
most grueling, most fucking inner torturous things I've also ever done.
Yeah, the expression that I like is painters like painting, writers like having written. And
Yeah.
so like people like writing, and so they think they're gonna like writing a book. No, they're gonna like having a book. It's going from the wanting to the having that is the trough of despair, as they call it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. I had no fucking clue how difficult it was going to be. Like, I really thought, like, yeah, put some ideas out there. We'll flush it out. It'll write itself.
No.
Like that was kind of the idea, but it was not that. I mean, you got to go all in.
I mean, if they wrote themselves, there'd be a lot more good books out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also, I think, for most people, it's like the hardest, longest thing that they've ever done.
Yeah.
So, like, you write an article, that's like one day's work. You might work on it for longer but you can get like the bulk of one article down in one day. I think that, to me, I've always felt like with books, and maybe it's like running a marathon or something where, well, even a marathon is easier in this sense, but it's like you cannot see the end of it. So like you could have a great day writing, and you've made no visible progress towards being closer.
Yeah.
Or even to think like it is not like you're going to read your own book at some point, like when you do the audiobook, let's say, and you're going to be caught by surprise by passages in your own book.
Well, I was doing that. I was preparing for that in this last proofing.
Yeah.
And I was reading and just reading constantly. Whitney's there, and I'm trying to like hear my own voice say it, because that's of course what needs to be there. And I would find myself still laughing at the jokes that we'd put in there and funny parts. And she's like, "You're laughing at your own stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah."
And that's why books are so fucking hard, because you can't. The reason that's catching you by surprise is that you can't mentally conceive of the entirety of that book in your head at the same time. Like it's so many consecutive days of thinking that they blur together, and so it's like you work and work and work, and you're not making progress. And so that's like the most discouraging thing in the world.
Well, the most discouraging, the heartbreaking, is when you work and work and work, and then you have a new idea, or you like reach a new level, or you understand, because this concept, we like re-understood this concept like 4 times, and each time you have to look at the whole piece and go like, damn, I got to start from the beginning of all of this.
Yeah.
And like, the voice changes and the structure changes and these different things. Like we rewrote this thing like
yeah,
a
you're
ton.
like, so I did all those days for no reason.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a good, I guess, metaphor for life, in that like you're gonna go down certain paths and then be like, oops, that was totally pointless. Yeah. But then when you get back on the road you're supposed to be on, there is some benefit to that.
You know what's been a really cool, validating process is I'm about to relaunch that Go For Your Win, which was the initial book that I came to you guys. Like, I got an idea for a book. And I just wrote everything, and it was like 30,000 words covering all of the things. And you're like, what are you doing, man? This is not like, this is going to work as a book. And I'm like, no, it is. And then I ended up turning it into an online course, and it was dope. And people had a really great experience with that. But I had to like teach people through the process because they're so dense. But now, as I'm about to re-release, I'm going through and rewriting, and I'm so much better at that craft than I was 2 years ago. And I thought I was a good writer then.
Yeah.
But now, like, the process of writing and rewriting and also working with Niels on this book, who's a fucking phenomenal writer himself, and like the process of learning, and almost mentoring from you guys, and then also rewriting and writing and rewriting. I'm just a way better writer now.
So let me ask you, when you write now, do you write less or do you write more? Because I think that you can improve in both directions. I'm curious, like, is Go For Your Win longer or shorter?
It's like same, because I've cut some stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And then I've added some stuff that needed to be added. Like it's like
fat
fewer
with muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Like fewer concepts, better explained.
Yeah.
And questions that I'm thinking better now.
Sure.
I can recall questions that you would have for me that I would have like vague answers for and never got really translated into the course, like the difference between your win and your mission and these different things. And I'm going back through it and like, oh, I never really explained that ever.
Right.
And now I'm like, if you're going to write this, you got to explain these pieces. You got to move out the extra stuff. You got to make it really clear.
Yes.
And that's, so it's absolutely like, it's amazing, man. It's like really.
Congratulations.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
It feels really good. Like regardless, you know, as we were mentioned before we got on air, like expectations are super high from the book because everybody who reads it is fucking stoked.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Right. You know, like first time, I can't even believe this. And I'm like, chill, everybody. Like, everybody chill. I don't want huge expectations on this thing, but.
Well, you know. I think, and I hope I didn't tell this story before, but I think where you want to be exactly where you are, which is that like, it's already a win. And then if it sells one copy, it's a win plus one copy. Mm-hmm. If it sells 1 million copies, then it's a win plus 1 million copies. Yeah. Like I think one of my favorite novels is A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. And so it was rejected by his publisher and then he committed suicide. Like he was so devastated by it that he committed suicide. And then his mother discovered the manuscript and Walker Percy published it and it won the Pulitzer Prize. And so like the same book that was rejected sold millions of copies. There's a statue of him in his hometown now, and it's considered one of the funniest books ever written. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's an indication of just how arbitrary everything that comes after you write like the last word. Like like where you are now, which is like it's essentially closed. Like you're proofing some pages and making little decisions, but like everything that comes after you have influence over but not control over. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like you could run the best marketing campaign ever and that like earthquake typhoon that they fear is going to happen in the Pacific Northwest, it could happen on the day your book comes out. Right. And nobody wants to read any books about anything for 9 months. And then it's like it never happened. Like Michael Lewis had a book come out like the week before September 11th and so did Robert Greene. And so that can happen, you know? And so if you can go into it like a win and then everything else is extra, that's where you want to be.
I can definitely feel that. I mean, the internal, I always talk about the same thing. It's all about the internal process. And I know my internal process is way fucking better. You know, I think the only other thing is, and I know that the people who do read it, I really am confident they're going to get value because we poured everything into this thing. Yeah. Had, you know, the best experts working on it. Like, it's fucking dope. But the publisher, I really love the publisher. Yeah. Like Karen, you know, from Harper Wave is just dope. She's awesome. She's got like, I don't know. Have you ever met her?
I've never met her. We've talked about it.
Yeah, I talked. She's just awesome. She's got like a octopus, mermaid, seahorse tattoo. She goes surfing in the cold Atlantic. She's just a gangster. And like, we like really connect. And like, I want to do good for her, you know, because she like stepped up and took a chance on me. And like, I wanted to do good. And it was like, I'm gonna do my best, but you know, I can't make promises.
Aubrey wouldn't share this, but like when he turned in the manuscript, he got an email from his editor that I've literally never seen before. Usually they're like, "This is good. We can work with this." Like it's like when you submit a book, you submit it and then it's accepted, which basically means like you've been accepted to the Navy SEALs training program, and now we're just gonna beat the shit out of you, and then out the other side will come a book. And when Aubrey turned in his book, they were like, "This is amazing. We love." Like nobody gets emails like that. It was absurd. So that would both be a huge relief and then also compound the exact expectations.
Well, it's also going to fuck me up for expectations in future ones. Right. I'm going to turn it in and be like, "There you go. You're welcome." And they're going to be like, "This is dog shit. Try again." I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think going like I'm better for the process means that you're both immune to potential downsides and then also though like immune to the good side, right? Because like this happened to me with The Obstacle Is the Way. Like I wrote it and my editor didn't send me an email like that. She was like, "This is good, you know, like this is pretty good." But then it came out and the sales were okay, and then like 8 or 9 months later they started to like explode. Yeah. But I remember that when it came out, everyone's like, it was okay. You know what I mean? Right. So like you also want to be in a position like dramatically exceeding expectations can have a deleterious effect if it makes you think you're better than you are. Right. You know what I mean? Because it could be that no other good books came out at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, do you know Mark Manson?
He wrote Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah, that's like a great book, and it sold really well, and he's an amazing writer. If Hillary Clinton had won the election, I think fewer people would be like, I want a book about not giving a fuck, right? So also extreme success can be outside of your control.
It was just the right macro environment that he slipped something that just hit the congruent message that was in the ethos.
That book would have been a home run whenever he published it. You don't get to choose whether the bases are loaded when you go up to bat. You know what I mean? And that's
great.
That's
metaphor.
part of it too. I just made that up.
That was fucking good. That was fucking good.
Yeah.
All you're responsible for is the swing, and that's a really important message in all this. Anytime you're outcome driven, you know, you're setting yourself up for failure. All you got to, there's the pitch, there's the swing. That's really all you're responsible for.
Yeah. I just read this book, The Way of Baseball, which is amazing. You would totally love it. It's about Sean Green, one of the best home run hitters ever. And his thing is, whenever he would hit a home run, as he would run around the bases, and then he would take his gloves off and throw them into the stands, because he wanted to like wash clean the good thing. Do you know what I mean? It's not just like, hey, I struck out last time, like I'm going to do it. I'm going to do better this time. It's also like, I did great this time, but now I'm not great because I did like a great thing.
That's interesting, because you do see people who can kind of struggle with that thing. Like, even I know a lot of hockey players, and if they have a big goal scoring season, and then the minute they go a couple games next season without any goals, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with me? I'm in a slump, and they're champions. They pull themselves out of it, but it's an additional thought process of the expectations that they even have for themselves, when before there was just like, shit, I'm scoring goals. It's sweet.
Yeah, it's like if you think the good things say something about you, that's a problem. If you think the bad things say something about you, that's a problem. You ideally want to root it in something that's not external at all.
Yeah, just how good can you play every play?
Right.
It's just like, again, all about that. What's right in front of you, that immediate process, that immediate next step, because anything else is going to take you out of the moment, and you're going to be out of touch with the magic of the present moment, which is where all the shit happens.
Yes.
Yeah. It was funny. I watched, I work with some fighters on that very same concept about staying rooted in the present, and, had a really good run working with Cody Garbrandt, and who won the title, and he was having a great fight in his last fight. And there was one moment, and I talked to him about this, one moment where the crowd started chanting, "Fuck you, TJ," which was his opponent.
Yeah.
And I've never heard the crowd actually get that negative towards an
crazy.
Opponent. It was really aggressive, right? And I was like super, like, I know him so well. He's like a little brother.
Right.
And I watched him, and like for a moment I saw him like what is the crowd saying?
Yeah.
And in the first round, the same head kick, he slipped it by like a mile. Like, it wasn't even close.
Really?
And then TJ throws that same head kick and hits him flush. And I talked to him afterwards, and that was like, that propelled him to be more aggressive. And that was kind of the moment, the momentum changer of the fight, for sure. And I talked to him afterwards, like, you heard what, you recognized what was going on, that chant from the crowd, didn't you? He's like, yeah. It's like, what was that about? And I was like, that was that one moment where your mind drifted from that fight in front of you, the kicks that might come, the punches might come, and just that slight errant thought.
Yep.
What the fuck is the crowd chanting right now? Like, I've never heard that
and
chant.
Is that a reflection of how great I am, or a reflection of how bad this guy is?
It's like that. The moment's thought just allowed that opening, where obviously TJ's an amazing fighter, and he's also a good friend, but that allowed that moment for that kick to connect on his head, and it's just, that's all it took.
Yeah, I spoke to TCU's baseball team at the beginning of the most recent season, because they'd read The Obstacle is the Way, but then that year the sports writers had ranked them like the number one team in college baseball going into the season. And so the coach is like, obviously that's on the one hand a great reflection of the coach, because the coach does all the recruiting and the training, and so it's a positive statement about the team. But on the other hand, it's like a coach's worst nightmare. Yeah. Like, the last thing you want to be doing is going into the season thinking you don't have to earn this.
Yeah.
Like that. Like they've done studies in college basketball where like being down less than 2 points going into halftime is actually a statistical advantage. So being down like 20 points, obviously not a statistical advantage. Being up, you'd think being up 2 points would be a statistical advantage. But in fact, being close but down is a statistical advantage because you can do it, but you have something to prove.
Yeah.
And so he gave every player on the team like a binder, and the top of it said "Ego is the enemy," because that like the last thing that you want going into the year is to think like, we're number one, we deserve this, we've already earned it. That's like not what you want. And I think in all in everything from athletics to like anything that has like a public component. Yeah. You can get distracted by it. It's not only your own ego, like, hey, I'm really mastering this, like I'm getting full of myself. But it's like it's like I think I'm a god, but like other people are like, you're the best ever, like you're a god, that's where it comes in.
Yeah, it's also an issue because expectation creates attachment. Like you assimilate that expectation, it becomes your norm. Like the ego is so greedy that it's like expectation, it gobbles that up and it makes it part of itself.
Yes.
And then so you're attached to that because it's a part of you. And then if you're attached to it, you're afraid of losing it. You're afraid of losing your attachment. So just by gobbling up that expectation, you introduce fear. And then that fear is, what is fear? Well, fear is a belief in something negative potentially happening. So then you get this fear mechanism, which is this subtle belief that's working against your positive belief.
Right.
And so it all comes in this subtle little tricky cycle where the ego eagerly grabbing up all this praise and all this expectation and exposes itself to fear.
Yeah, it's like if you're really smart, ego can tell you that you're a genius. And that's like a toxic thing because you're not going to put in the work, or you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna trust your first instincts instead of questioning them. But then the hard part is, it's like if what you do is public, then you might go like, I'm not a genius. But then what if the New York Times is hailing you as a genius? Do you know what I mean? Then it starts to feel like, oh, it's not my ego, it's the truth, which is almost And so you can get caught up in that stuff, and like you really have to ignore it as much as possible. Like I think as a writer online, like one of the things that I don't look at all, probably to my detriment in some ways, but I think I've never looked at the stats on my own website. Like I don't want to know what's working or not working. I know like, hey, people are liking this. I'm hearing from fans. Like I want those metrics. I don't want to go like, this did X amount of page views, so it's better than this one, which did, half X page views.
Yeah.
Because
it's interesting.
That's not the metric that I want to determine success by. And so, it's like if you think the number of Instagram followers that you have is a reflection of how good or bad you are, maybe you should look at how shitty some of the top people on Instagram actually are.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
That's that slippery slope of the positive feedback loop, right? Like a girl who's just wanting to put out a kind of a positive message and, express herself on Instagram. She shows her butt one time and all of a sudden those likes, they go through the roof.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wow, I see what the audience wants. Yeah. And then she's like, feeling like, man, I'd like some more validation.
Right.
More ass shot, more. And then it's like, it ends up building and all of a sudden she's an Instagram model and the whole idea of what she was there for in the first place is different. Now there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But if you just follow, the kind of those crude metrics rather than your own guide star, you can get steered in some weird alleys. Yeah.
It's like you have this compass and then there's like there's a magnet over here that is fucking with the compass. Yeah. And you've got to be able to, no, I have to actually compensate for that. Like I have to go extra degrees in this direction. So I'm continuing to go in the straight line that I want to go in.
Right. Yeah. It's just finding that path, that woo way, just kind of right through the middle, find the Tao, find the balance.
Think about with your book, like, is it a success because it hits the New York Times bestseller list? Is it a success because it sells for 20 years? Is it a success because it helps 25 elite performers do what they do? Is it a success because it makes On It better or bigger? Is it success because it gives you a platform? Is it a success because you wrote the best book you were humanly capable of? It's like, it's kind of a combination of all those things.
Some of those are dangerous traps, especially like the New York Times bestseller. Like that is the most dangerous of all traps because it's the most out of your control. and it's the most requiring some external combination of sales and tastemaker and whoever else to just bless
by other people.
To bless your book with the holy water and say this is that. But it also, it is a valuable piece if you get. It's a weird. That one's the worst one. Yes. I think the best one is the last one you mentioned, which is this book is a success because I wrote the best fucking book I could.
Sure.
And that I think, and I did, and that's what feels good because there was time I had choices. Yes. I had choices in multiple drafts and draft revisions, all the way up to the last draft revision where I could have just been like, yeah, it's good. Whatever changes you want are good. But I never chose that. I always no matter what was going on, no matter what other options I could have done to take the shortcut, I didn't. And so as long as I just rest my support on that, I'll be fine.
Well, I think, and there's also more than one definition of success, right? So I think one of the mistakes people make, whether with any creative project or their lives, is they go okay, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. And then they face choices like the ones you faced. And then they choose the right choice if they were pursuing some other thing, right? So if your goal is to be the next hugely popular diet book, well, then you made lots of wrong choices in your book, right? Or if you're trying to accomplish X or Y or Z, you have to make decisions in line with that thing. So it's not just how do I avoid these bad goals? But oftentimes people will say one thing is their goal, and then they'll get distracted by they'll try to accomplish all the goals at the same time, even though they are sometimes mutually exclusive. There's this story I've used a bunch of times now from Seneca, where his definition of tranquility is that you're on your path and you're not distracted by the people who are crisscrossing your path, he says. And then he says you're also not distracted by the people who are close to your path either. So it's what about someone whose path looks like it's intersecting with yours, but it's actually parallel, or vice versa, right? You can go okay, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, but so-and-so who's the CEO of another company, he just put out a book and look what he got.
Right.
And it's yes, but he made a number of decisions that you chose not to make. And so you can't have both. And so I think people get themselves into trouble. They're my number one goal is to be a great father. But then I'm telling myself my business is everything. Or again, vice versa. They're I'm running this business, and then they're comparing themselves against a single CEO with no kids who everyone thinks is an asshole. And it's but you have a family and you're a great person and people and you do all these things for your community. It's not fair for you or to that person for you guys to compare each other because your paths are so different.
Yeah, as soon as you try to compare, a comparison in general is the pathway to hell.
Yes.
It is straight paved in comparison. But especially comparison specifically is what you're talking about, taking one little thing and using that as the metric, because there's always going to be someone who's better than you at that one thing because they've just devoted more resources to that thing. You got to look at yourself as generally oh, well, maybe I'm a little more balanced. Maybe I have a little more time for meditation.
Yeah.
Maybe, I'm a little nicer to the people around me because I'm not as stressed. Maybe I'm going to live a little longer because I'm nurturing my body a little bit more. All of these fucking things.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point to bring up. So with this book here, Perennial Seller, you cover a lot of this stuff that we're talking about here, right? It's kind of making the case for not this flash in the pan, but for, something that's going to last and something that, you've really set your goal, and you're basically establishing this goal of don't chase the shiny stuff, make something that is valuable.
I would say we probably agree that if I were to look at your favorite books and my favorite books, not only would they be a bunch of the same books, but most of them would not be brand new. They would be from a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And I bet this is the same for movies. I bet it's the same for most of the products that you use. And so I think, I don't know, I've just always admired stuff that stood the test of time. And so I've just been really fascinated with why do they do that? My favorite my favorite restaurant in Austin is Hofbrauhaus. Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
It's like the most mediocre steakhouse you can imagine, but it's like
I thought that was a money laundering joint.
It probably is, but it's been open since like 1942, right? Like, or how old is the Driscoll Hotel?
Yeah.
You know, or the Austin American Statesman has been a newspaper for almost 200 years. And so I'm just fascinated by things that have done that. Like Elon Musk said that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. I would say that's probably also applies to like books and movies and stuff. So it's like, if you're going to do that, why would you have to start over in 1 year because it's already irrelevant? Do you know what, like nobody starts a business because they hope it goes out of business soon. Yeah. But in their businesses, they make a lot of decisions that are not putting themselves in a position to endure or last.
Yeah. Well, you see that in our business. You see that companies will chase like supplement fads.
Yes.
You know, be like, you know, Dr. Oz is talking about Garcinia cambogia. We got to get that to market right now.
Right.
You know, and that's gonna bump for like in search terms for a couple months. And if you chase it, you can ride that. But in a little while, nobody's taking that shit because it wasn't founded in like solid science and
I mean, I've seen that in my own life. Like, so in 2012, I went to Penguin Random House and said, I want to write a book about Stoic philosophy. And they were like, that's not a good idea. like they were not particular. Like, I took half the advance for The Obstacle is the Way as I got for Trust Me, I'm Lying. Actually, less than half. Right. So that was an indication of just like how enthusiastic they were about this book. And then, you know, it came out and it sold really well. And then I did another book. And so now like this concept of Stoicism is sort of the rage. Like there's been articles written about it and trend pieces. And so now it's really funny to watch other authors like trying to cash in on it. Mm-hmm. And it not only is it silly to try to cash in on a trend that you are not first on typically, but they're assuming that my work is popular because of the trend and not for some deeper reason that's related to the trend. Do you know what I mean? So people go like, oh, like, you know, everyone's talking about this, so let's do it and then we'll get rich is like basically the thinking. And it's like, actually there's probably some deeper reason for that success, and the trend is like a symptom or a byproduct of it, right? Like, Mike Myers has said that like fame is like a byproduct of doing good work, but people think they need to become famous to be a good actor. Basically, is like the problem.
Well, you know, fame has occurred without good work, and so that skews the system too.
Sure,
you know, like the Kardashian phenomenon, basically. You know, like that wasn't from an applied 10,000 hours of talent that they became these giant megalithic, you know. Industries.
And then so people go like, oh, so that's the easier way to do it. And actually you should go, okay, how many people have ever been famous for not being talented? Not that many, but how many really talented people have become successful and famous? So which one is better odds?
Yeah, and which one yields the greatest happiness overall? You know, like like the process will yield the happiness. It is the work. It is earning it. You know, it's like the lotto winners that win the lottery and you like track them 5 years later and it's like life is in shambles and they were way happier before they won the lottery. You know, it's just weird because they didn't do the work to get that money and earn it and figure out the processes of how to manage wealth and build the steps up and really feel like, man, this is mine. It was like,
totally.
Oh shit, I'm rich.
Yeah. And so I think when you're setting out to do something and when you're even just thinking about what you want your career, your life to look like, you go to those first principles. You go like, what do people need? What am I good at? What could actually make a difference? What needs to exist? Not like, oh, fidget spinners are popular right now. What can I do with fidget spinners? You know, which is like essentially what most people do. And like I've seen this with like stoicism where people are like, oh, you should make stoic t-shirts, or, you know, it's like, I didn't get into this to cash in. Like I only want to make things that are really good and meaningful. You know, and so there is an element of leaving money on the table with this attitude, but I think only in the short term. In the long term, when you look at the things, you know, George Lucas could have put, you know, a lot of crappy celebrity cameos into Star Wars that maybe might have made it more popular when it came out. Right? Star Wars is beaten at the box office by Smokey and the Bandit. But which one did better over the long term?
Yeah.
And it's because one is rooted in the hero's journey and the other is a crappy franchise.
Yeah, it's abiding by the universal truth that'll be applicable always.
Yes.
That is what the best books and what the best music and what the best, they strike a chord that's wordlessly and effortlessly true, regardless of the concepts themselves hold water. And that's why you can read someone like Marcus Aurelius and have it make sense, because he was really tuned in to the processes that were going on internally, like how to harden and strengthen through the process of resistance. And that's something that will always, it's just a universal law. We grow through the overcoming of stressors.
And that's what I've tried to do stoic wise, is go like, okay, I want to capture the true, like right now people are interested in stoicism. So that's one, you can capitalize it on that way. Or you can say, here's what has always interested people in stoicism, and that's the value that I'm going to provide. Like, Jeff Bezos's mantra is focus on the things that don't change. And I think most entrepreneurs and creative people, unfortunately, do focus on things that are going to change.
It's also, there's like Shark Tank syndrome.
Yes.
Where it's like everybody thinks they can come up with some little idea and then I could get on Shark Tank for this. They'll get an investor and they'll just make it work because they're on TV and it's fucking,
right.
And Damon John's going to do it. And there we go. We're going to be all set.
When it's like, how many seasons of Shark Tank have they done? How many products have been on Shark Tank? How many of those have you seen or bought or used?
Yeah, it's true, right?
Yeah.
They'll highlight one every once in a while that'll be killing it as just like proof of concept.
Yeah.
And
that one was probably going to be successful anyway.
Yeah. And it feels a little bit like that, watching like old Running Man, where they have like something they're displaying to the world, but inside in the works, most of it is just chaos and crashes and fucking.
Yeah. And or you hear, like, it's easy to forget just how much stuff is made every day. Like how many films will be accepted into Sundance this year, and how many will be selected, and then how many will win, and then how many will you see? And that's been happening every year for how many years? And if you're just trying to capture what's in the zeitgeist right now, you're basically saying like, I have to win this season. Mm-hmm. Whereas like I would rather be this San Antonio Spurs, which is like they have a system and they recruit and they're good every year. And some years they go, like some years if there's no injuries, if the landscape makes it work, and if everything breaks their way, they win everything.
Yeah.
But like no team is ever going into a game being like, oh good, we're only playing the Spurs today. Whereas like other teams that are like, we're trying to get that draft pick to get that star player, and then we're going to be good for a couple years. Like that just doesn't interest me.
Or leveraging all that money. You see that in MMA leagues too. They'll be gobbling up these old fighters with an old name, and it's just like fucking Tito Ortiz fighting again. How old is he? 100? Like, how many does he even have a spine that flexes? Like, what's going on? But and instead of, and I think they have some strategy to that. I'm not in their business, so I can't knock it. But it's, if you keep devoting all your effort to these things that expire quickly, you're not actually building the following of the up and coming stars that you could actually own and build an empire with. Like, if you keep focusing all your headlines on the Tito Ortizes of the world, like, how are you going to get a Conor McGregor that changes the landscape of your company? And changes the fucking zeitgeist of the world around your sport.
And look, there's lots of ways to make money. So I'm not saying that you can't make money doing those other things. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, like, that's not how I want to make money. And it's not what I want to do. And it's like, if I was only motivated by money, why am I even working in book publishing? Like, that's such a ridiculous industry. Like, I could go make money on Wall Street. I would just rather do that. If I was just trying to make as much money as quickly as possible, like, selling people books is probably like the worst way to do it. So if I'm going to do it, I should do it right, And I think if you feel called to do something, you have to respect that, and you have to respect whatever space that you're in. Like, if you're like, okay, this fighter is worth X on the market, and then we can arbitrage that, blah, blah, like, yeah, just trade stocks, man.
Yeah.
It's easier. It's way easier, like open a food truck or something. Like it's way easier, or a laundromat, like something that's way more predictable, that can't go as wrong as easily as, it's just way easier.
I think a lot of Stephen Pressfield talks about people chasing these shadow careers because it's actually scary to work on your calling.
Yeah.
To a certain degree. Like that is terrifying because if you fail at the thing you're called to do, it hurts you the worst. You think it hurts you the worst. But the thing is, like, there is no such thing as failing. It's just getting better at that thing. But there's all of this resistance and distraction that'll have you chasing these things that you really don't care about. So if they lose, you can just fold them and go away.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the traps that people fall in. They'll start a project and they won't even finish it. Like a painter will finish 75% of a piece and it looks amazing, but she won't finish the rest. And then that way she never has to take it to market or go to the gallery and then have it up for rejection. She just has the process that she can post about. Sure. Like, that looks dope.
Right.
And then she's like, okay, good.
Right.
It's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look, I could see how very easily someone in your position could fall into it. It's like, you like books, but you're the CEO of this company. Mm-hmm. And so, how dedicated are you going to be to this thing that if you fail at, it challenges you, right? It says something about you. And so I see lots of people in that position all the time. They don't actually commit to doing it. Mm-hmm. They always say they're going to commit, but they don't. At some point, they fail the commitment because it's like the teenager. It's like, if I don't try, then I can't fail, you know? And then I was the same way. Like I when I was growing up, I was naturally like a really good runner. And then I started running in high school, and all of a sudden there were like other good runners. So like I wanted to be the runner who just dicked around the most and like got in trouble the most and got away with the most, instead of competing with these people and them beating me anyway.
Yeah. No, I see that in athletes too. Athletes who will intentionally fuck off, like the week of the fight, so that in their head, if they lose, like, I was
just didn't train
off,
enough.
But I met that girl though, so I'm living my life, bro.
Yeah.
Instead of like really saying, no, I did everything I could and I just wasn't good enough this night. That's what the real champions do, is they don't need to leave themselves these backdoor outlets because they can take that blow to their ego. Their ego is resilient enough.
That's what I liked about the Conor McGregor fight, is like, he was almost certainly never going to win that fight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But one, he thought maybe he could, and like, he's the only one that knows, right?
Yeah.
And then he gave it everything, and then he was like, yeah,
that was it.
Yeah. I tried. Like it wasn't. There was no excuses.
Yeah.
There was never a sense that he wasn't trying to win either.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. He just phone it in for the money.
Yeah, he didn't phone it in, and it also wasn't like a farce.
Yeah.
Like the run up to it was like preposterous, but like it was a real fight, and two people fought, and one walked out the winner. Do you know what I mean? And like, there's a binariness to that I think just scares the shit out of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's where that internal work, knowing that you aren't defined by these external circumstances. You aren't defined by the medals, the accolades, the scorecards, the likes on your posts, whatever. It's just following your guide star, like all the way through, being true to who you really fucking are.
Although one of the things I talk to sports coaches about, and I always tell them I'm jealous of, is that like, you take like a good basketball coach or a good baseball coach especially, it's like, they'll have lost hundreds of games. Like, even in a good baseball, like you win the World Series, you lost like probably at least 60 games in the regular season. Like, that's insane. Mm-hmm. So like, they get so in a way, they get so comfortable with losing that it actually does become what we're talking about, right? Like, they know, like, you can have a great game and lose, and have the worst game ever and win. Like the Atlanta Falcons won last night in Sunday Night Football, and like both the Saints and the Falcons played equally terrible. Do you know what I mean? And so the fact that one emerged the winner is not indicative of the placement of either team.
Yeah.
And the problem is the rest of us in life don't have that. And so I actually think that's one reason to have some athletic, competitive pursuit in your life, whether it's weightlifting or running or swimming or whatever it is, or CrossFit even. So you can get comfortable, like just not win, like just get comfortable losing. Because like for me, I've released 7 books. I would be devastated if one of those was a failure, right? And that's way more books than most people. Like you've had 1 book, right? Yeah. Like, and so you're not going to be, if it sells 0 copies, even all of what we're talking about here, it's going to be very difficult for you to go like, you win some, you lose some, you know, because there's not some, there's just one. There's just the one.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have the volume to get used to that.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So we can't be philosophical enough the way that, like to go back to the game, and I know it'll be way far away for whenever people are listening to this, but like in the Saints game, Sean Payton like got upset at a call, walked onto the field, got a penalty, and it lost the game. So he blew the entire game, right? But he was just sometimes you do that. Do you know what I mean? Like because he's coached hundreds of games, you know, and like he'll learn something from it and he'll walk away from it, you know, he'll be better for the experience. Like
I think that's the hard part with when there's absolute loss.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like if you do something and it hurts somebody, absolutely. You know, like you've caused some irreparable thing to happen and you don't really get another chance to be like, oh yeah, I learned from that. You know, I learned from my drug driving. Yeah, that family's dead, but you know, like there's some decisions that are like so gnarly in the consequences that it's really difficult.
I didn't get to tell my dad I loved him before he died, or
like you don't get a bunch of practice runs at that. But the universe, it feels like you tend to get little micro opportunities for that. Like maybe for that example, maybe there was a chance where you were going away on a long trip and you could have practiced, you know, before the long death. Like, you know, you can't. Sometimes there are massive consequences out of your control, but you can control the small things. You know, you can like do the little steps along the way, and that helps with the bigger things, because sometimes this big shit just happens. Just lightning bolts come out of the blue, and those can be incredibly valuable too, because they'll shake you of your attachments, shake you of what you think you couldn't live without. Like I couldn't be me without this, my reputation or my success or my money, and then something will come and it'll just dash that against the wall, like you threw a Christmas ornament against like a cinder block wall, and just and you're like, oh well, I'm still here.
Yeah, I think I have a line in Ego's the Enemy where I was saying it's like the world is constantly giving you feedback, and so you can hear it when it's in a whisper, or you can wait for it to like hold you down and scream it in your ear. Do you know what I mean? Like you can. So yeah, it's like, oh, you know, I wish I would have told them that before I was gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then so I'm gonna be improved by that situation. Or you can. Every time you go on a trip, you make the same mistake over and over and over again, and then one day, like they're gone. And so that's where you get that major. Then you learn it because it's like it's staring you in the face and it can't be avoided.
Too loud.
And so ideally, it's like ideally you want to trip and fall, not trip and fall off a cliff. You know, like so. Can you do this stuff early, and can you learn from those experiences, and then also. I mean, look, this is why I think literature is so important. I think this is why understanding history is so important. Can you learn from those mistakes from other people? Like how many people have you heard tell stories about, you know, not making things right with their parents and then losing them? And then you're like, oh yeah, you shouldn't have done that. But then do you do anything about it in your own life? Or like historically, like where we are politically right now, like, if people had even just a slight understanding of history, this would not be where we are right now. Do you know what I mean? Like no one would have taken maybe it'll totally work out, but I don't think so. But we would not have taken.
The obstacle is the way, Ryan.
The obstacle is the way.
We're just creating a bigger obstacle so we have a stronger way on the other side.
Yeah, and we just might not survive it. But like if people would know, like it doesn't always end up in catastrophe, but sometimes in similar situations it does. And so if people had a better understanding of history, they never would have taken the risk.
Yeah, I think it's really important to like accept those small failures, accept when you're wrong, accept when you're off course, rather than paving over them and making excuses and justifications. Like you gotta, like, when you step in a little bit of dog shit, you gotta smell it, look at it, take your time and be like, wow, I got shit all over me. Like this is my fault. Take ownership of those little things. And then, it won't, hopefully the big shit won't happen.
Yeah. I wrote in my journal the other day, I was like, I was hanging on to something and I wrote, people who hang on to something must be very confident that they know when they're going to die. Do you know what I mean? Like that I felt that I had the luxury of like, oh, I'll deal with this tomorrow. Or like, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm saying I'm mad about this instead of apologizing or making it right now, even though I know in 2 days this will have all blown over. So what I'm doing is I'm saying that I know for sure that I have 2 days.
Yeah. That's one of the guide stars for me has been the Lakota philosophy of today is a good day to die.
Yeah.
Like to be able to go into that day being like, today is a good day to die. My house is in order. My affairs are in order. I've said I love you to all the people I love. I've done the things. I've kissed the wife. I've done the things that I need to do, so that if today is my day, I go with a smile to the other side. Like maybe it's a shame and you fight it and whatever, but your affairs are in order.
Yes, you're not writing checks that you don't know you're going to be around to cash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's it. If you can wake up, if you can get to that point, and I think that's also another beautiful thing about, for me, this book process is, even with the Go For Your Win, especially with this rewrite, and then with this book, I feel like some of the reason why I'm here, like some of the gift that I had to give is at least in existence.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's out of my mind and out of the processes that I've gone through, and it actually exists, because you can die. I think one of my greatest fears earlier was dying before I was able to give any of the gifts that I'm able to give. And like every time I write a book, it's like a little bit like, whew, at least I got that one out. So if now I get hit by a bus, like I got a little bit of headway at least.
Although the Stoics would say like, look, it doesn't matter because you're gonna be dead either way. But like, do you know what I mean? Like you're not gonna.
But they were also obsessed with their legacy too, in the same regard.
I think they were, but I guess they would go like, you're not going to be a unfulfilled legacy or fulfilled legacy. You're not going to be around to know either way, right? You're not going to be around. Like there's this Roman poet, I'm forgetting his name, but he was saying, he's like, when you die, you'll miss out on all these things. You'll never see your child running down the hall to be picked up in your arms ever again. And then he says, but you'll be dead, so you won't know that you're missing it, And so there's like a freedom in that too. But I did find like, so I turned 30 this year, and it was amazing for me to go like, okay, like I'm married to a woman I love. I have a son. I've written these books. I've done tons of work that I'm proud of. It's like, it's all upside from here. Like, you know what I mean? Like there isn't any of that, like, but I haven't had enough time. Mm-hmm. And that is, to me, that's like true wealth. Yeah. To be like that everything else is now house money is like fantastic.
Yeah.
And even as as an investor and stuff, I think about that. It's like my first thing is like, can I take my initial money out? As soon as I can get whole, then I feel great about everything. You know what I mean? Like if you put money in Bitcoin, you could sell just enough. Now you can just watch the spectacle.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's like even when you're gambling in Vegas or whatever, and you gamble and then you put your initial buy-in back in your pocket. Yeah. And at that point, gambling is fun as shit.
Yeah.
As long as you have the discipline not to go back in your pocket.
Yeah. Can you do that? But that to me, that's a wonderful. So if I have 1 year and 1 day, or if I have 60 more years, or some scientific breakthrough and I have 100 more years, like I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can be really free and happy, because then it diminishes the fear, and then it diminishes that. And then you'll end up being more productive anyways.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like you're a better gambler when you're not playing with scared money. Like that's universally true, whether you're playing poker or whatever. Like if you're free to be able to make the moves you need to move, be aggressive when you need to be aggressive, bluff when you need to bluff, that's when you're going to be your freest. But it's counterintuitive, because you think the more you care, the more successful you'll be. But really, the less fear you have and the freer you are to express yourself, generally, the more productive you're going to be.
Well, we talked about that fight where it was just the 1 second of hesitation where he's like, why are they doing this or that?
Yeah.
That's what that sort of regret or hesitation or expectation or whatever, if the margin for error is so thin, why do you think you have room to like second guess? So if you can get in a position where you're like, win or lose, I'm good, that's like fantastic. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be honest. And like when I look, I mean, and I don't, because some people disagree politically, but like when I look at like the people, not when I look at Trump, because Trump's like whatever he is. When I look at people who are involved with him, I very much understand that a huge percentage of that is like they wanted to accomplish X and they saw him as a means for doing so, or like they're paid well, or they're doing this so then they can get a Fox News contract, or there's all these things that they want. And it's like or just people who are afraid to lose what they have, so they won't say what's obviously true. Mm-hmm. Like that they can't go like, this dude is insane. Or they can't go like, hey, obviously I'm a Republican, so I want Republicans to be in power, but I draw the line at child rapists. Yeah. Like I'm not gonna be a party to that. Those are people who are living in a position where they're playing with scared money. Like they're afraid to lose what they have. Mm-hmm. And so like the thing I cherish the most is me being able to say and speak what I feel. And so like I want to make sure that I'm making life decisions
that support
that never
goes back to your first idea of like, what is your win? Like,
yeah.
What is your ultimate goal? What's your KPI on life? You know, and if that's to have freedom, autonomy, and that's the thing that people miss, because you can get in that other trap where you start making a certain amount of money and now your expectation and identity is exactly, your ego absorbs all of that, all right to the bleeding edge of what you have. So any less, and you're miserable. It's like, or you just say, no, like I was good way back there a long time ago, and this growth, this is just fucking gravy. Like,
I remember my first job when I dropped out of college, they paid me $30,000 a year. And I remember saying out loud to another person, what am I going to do with all this money? And so like I try to return to that all so I felt rich. Like I felt like I had a lifestyle and a way of a naivete, obviously at 19, that like I thought $30,000 was like more money than one could reasonably spend.
Right.
And this wasn't like 1950s dollars. This was like 2006, right? So this is not that long ago. And so I as much as I can keep that true, that's super powerful, because it's not that hard to make $30,000, right? And so, but people felt rich when they crossed six figures, and now they heard that somebody got a 7-figure bonus where they only got a high 6-figure bonus, and they're like, is this? How am I gonna feed my family? And like those are the people that go, yeah, Trump's okay, or whatever. That there are people who can't speak truth when they need to.
I've often meditated on, when I was right after college, I moved out to this like basically 1-room cabin out on my family's ranch property. And I've still, as unlikely as it is, I remember I was happy in that thing. I had my girlfriend from Australia at the time, and she was out there living with me. And I remember us making like, sandwiches in the little toaster, and like I was cruising around. I could like build a fire pit with my hands out there, and I was doing my work and trying to figure out how I was going to start this marketing company. And I was happy in that little place. And so even now with all this, when I get too paranoid or too stressed, it's like, look, if no matter what happens, that little 1-room house is still unoccupied, and I could just sit out there and I could write and I could meditate and I could, bring some mushrooms out there every once in a while, and I'd be okay.
No, like Bill Burr has this amazing joke where I forget the setup, but he's just saying, he's like, there's way worse things than like sleeping on a cot and eating ramen, and like working a job you hate to support like people you hate is way worse than sleeping on a cot and eating ramen, Yeah. And so, it's like, if you can look back to those like good old days, and actually be okay with returning to them. It allows you to make decisions I think other people would never consider.
Do you think that's what the fundamental basis of this minimalist movement is all about? Like people who've gotten too caught up in the trappings of more and more and more, they're like, I got to get back to baseline because I can't control my attachment to all of these things.
I think that's probably part of it. I mean, I think they're probably thinking that having like physical, like freedom from physical things will give them mental and psychological freedom.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Stoics, Seneca was like the richest man in Rome, or the second richest man in Rome. And he would say, he's like, look, the philosopher should be indifferent to wealth or poverty, right? The philosopher can be a philosopher if he's a slave. He should be a philosopher if he's a rich businessman. But he's going to prefer being rich, is what he was saying. He's like,
if you can control the internet.
He would rather, it's like, if you're saying, okay, do you want to have nothing and like be struggling for your next meal, or do you want to have complete abundance? Obviously, you'd rather have complete abundance. And actually what he was saying, which I like, is he was saying, look, there's only one way to be philosophical when you're poor, which is to like bear and endure your condition honorably. Whereas he's saying actually being rich presents more opportunities to be philosophical because you have all these things that you have to balance and make sure that they're not changed. It's actually not harder, but it's a different kind of hard to be Bill Gates and not be an asshole.
Well, it's easier. It's always easier to do the external work than it is to do the internal work. Like if you show someone a sand pile and give them a spoon and say, enlightenment is just actually physically taking your hand and spooning this sand pile into this other thing. They will get that motherfucker done. But when it comes to like the inner work, that's way, way harder. And I think I've always thought the same thing. Even biblically, they say a rich man has the same chance of entering the kingdom of heaven, which is, really when you get into it, is not about the afterlife. It's about the state of being, in heaven, in peace with oneself. As a camel getting through the eye of a needle, like it's going to be really hard externally. But in a way, the hardness of it can be it's the obstacles way. Like you apply stoicism to that same thing and say, oh yeah, you'll have many things. That will be a lot of opportunities to practice the release of attachment. Where, it doesn't mean that you can't do it just because you have those things. You can use those things to help you propel you to even greater release of attachment because you have more things that you could potentially lose. So,
well, I like the Muhammad Ali quote where he says, it's hard to be humble when you're as great as I am. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's harder. Do you know what I mean? Like he was saying it's like, oh, that's why I'm not humble. But I think you take it as like, yeah, you have to work harder than someone who's not the greatest.
So your humility will be even, if you truly are, your humility will be even more tested. And it'll be even more strong.
And it'll be more impressive if you get there.
Yeah, it's like Chris Rock saying everybody's faithful if they don't have options.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you got like someone who's truly represents that would have all the options in the world. And then and be practicing that. And then that's when that's true faith. But if you have limited options, then all right, that's you may have it, but it hasn't been tested. And that testing process is what makes things stronger ultimately.
Yeah, of course.
But it's the hard road. And a lot of people they don't have that mentality. They don't have that driving philosophy, that ethos to say, whatever is external is just an opportunity to improve my internal. They don't have that thing. They just get focused on the external. So minimalism is kind of, well, I'll just remove all the external. And that's a good, maybe like a immediate Band-Aid. But even better would be to have all the things and be like, oh, I could lose all the things in a minute, or just give them away freely and just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Or maybe it's like the digital minimalism. I think if it was the equivalent of like detox, like I have a drug problem, clearing it off. Then I have to go back into the real world. Do you know what I mean? I don't get to live in this hospital room for the rest of my life. So no, I think that's right. I don't know. I think the idea that you're just going to fix this stuff by some sweeping, like that you're going to go on a juice cleanse and then you're going to be healthy is like not how that works either. It's hard. It's harder.
But it can be a good first step.
So
giving some of your extra shit away could be a good first step. Simplifying things could be a good first. Doesn't mean that these aren't the right moves.
Yes.
It's just you have to look at it as an intermediate step. one juice cleanse isn't going to cover yourself from a pack a day of cigarettes and, you know, a life of eating bullshit, you know, and fucking Frito-Lay pies.
And travel's the same way. Like people think like, oh, I got to get away. I got to go up in the mountains. I got to retreat. I was actually nervous because tend to be skeptical of people who go away to write. And I remember with your book, you're like, I'm scheduling this time. Because most people, the fact that they have to schedule the time means that even when they schedule the time, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, people go like, oh, I'm just so stressed. That, you know, I work so hard. I'm taking a 2-month trip to Bali. And it's like, they're not, Seneca would say, no, it's Emerson. He said, people bring ruins to ruins. Like they think like, if I go visit this beautiful historic site, like I'll find some peace there. And it's like, no, you're just as wrecked as that thing is.
Yeah.
And so I think the minimalism and the travel thing, the problem is people see them as like these panaceas, like that it's the magical, and actually, you know, I don't do any of the plant medicine stuff that you've talked about, but people probably think like, I go in the jungle, I drink this broth.
Ayahuasca, it's all good from there.
For the rest of my life, like I have this thing. And it's like, no, this is a way to access this thing, but it's what you do with it.
Yeah.
And it's how you maintain it.
When I was going away, I mean, I had like a nice small room with limited other things.
Yeah.
But it's still the hell. You're still in the same hell. You're still pacing around the room. You're still like, I could just, you know, kind of go down and I could walk around. I could do this thing. I could do this thing. I could go chap into work and answer all the, you know.
Yeah.
You still face the same hell. It's just, for me, it's limited, limited avenues of attack of my attention.
Yeah.
You know, which was a very practical thing, but it doesn't diminish the hell.
Right.
You know,
wherever you go, there you are.
There you are. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, shit, man, we fucking ran through an hour.
Done.
Yeah. Killed it. It's great to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, I have to get back out. You were showing me all your animals out there on your ranch. You got quite the collection now.
Yeah. I got more land now too.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Last time I went out, we had to take a bird to the animal hospital. It was quite eventful. There was this bird who was wounded, and there was this water snake that was going after the bird, and it was like time pressure. And I was like, "Do you set that up for all your guests, like to have like the optimal ranch experience?"
It's never a dull moment. Something has always gone horribly wrong.
Good shit. All right, Perennial Seller. This is your latest one out. Daily Stoic was the one before it, right?
Uh-huh.
That one's dope too. I'm sure you got like a whole stack of anything else coming. Anything else you want to talk about?
Not yet. Oh, I have the journal. Did I send you the journal, the Daily Stoic journal?
Yes, got that too.
Journal based on the book too.
Mm-hmm. And all kinds of little. Thank you also for all those little kind of cool mementos, the memento moris, the
sweet.
Coins, and the little shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got some fucking dope things.
And thanks for the Captain America weights.
Oh yeah, man. Get that. We got some Punisher plates coming.
Really? I like the Punisher way more than Captain America.
Yeah, these are going to be sweet. I think that might have been the first time I mentioned it. Exclusive. All right, my man.
All right, thanks.
Good shit. Thanks, everybody. Peace.